everybody. It's Heather with the Leadership with Heart podcast. And I am so excited, really, really, really excited to talk to Dr. Yetta Toliver today. I was introduced to her because I spoke at a diversity, equity, inclusion conference for some global employees, employee resource groups a while back. And I felt a real connection, and we've just been kind of keeping connected here and there. And I thought, well, okay, at the beginning of the year, who do I want to have on here? Because you are just so spectacular. I mean, just such big-hearted, perfect for the Leadership with Heart podcast. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Heather. It's just exciting for me to be able to be a part of the podcast today.
So where are you right now anyway in your leadership journey?
Right now in my leadership journey, I have the awesome privilege of leading diversity, inclusion, and belonging at Xerox. It's definitely, when we talk about diversity, inclusion, belonging at Xerox, it's an essential part of the culture and the value system of the organization. And at Xerox, we're often striving in spaces and continuing to be on the forefront of driving change within our company and our communities. And DIB, we finally call it, is definitely a place in which we're thriving to grow.
I think the great thing about it is, again, your heart is in it, and you having been there, like you said before we started recording, that you haven't been there for like you're going your 35th year. Wow. And being just in the diversity and inclusion role for now a year, but your heart is all in it because you've been with the organization. So you really, really want this to work.
Absolutely. And who would think 34 years into working with Xerox in various diverse roles, if I can use that word again, this opportunity came about in the 2020 with all of as the global unrest unfolded. We had racial inequities, we had social injustice going on. I had an opportunity to step into this role and start leading diversity, inclusion, and belonging, with the focus being on what could Xerox do to build a more diverse pipeline, accelerate the careers of women and diverse talent, partner with vendors that can help us go after sourcing underrepresented talent in some unique ways to help fill our funnel, as well as building on Xerox's rich history. Back in 1968, Xerox was known for starting caucus groups, and that first caucus group is still thriving today, which we call employee resource groups. So we knew our culture embedded into our DNA is about diversity, but what could we do to extend our reach, to serve better in our communities, and be able to figure out a way to measure our progress so we didn't lose sight of the importance of diversity, inclusion, and belonging as we continue to move forward.
Awesome. That's awesome. So I'm curious to know, what do people, the folks that report to you, or those who look to you for guidance, let's see, even over the years, what would they say or describe as your leadership style? What's your gut about that?
Oh, well, my leadership style, especially being a leader in various avenues inside of Xerox, an organization for more than 20 years, and then also taking my leadership style out in the community, in places I serve, is a mixed bag. They will probably look at me and say that one of my stronger leadership styles is coach style. I love mentoring. I love ensuring I can help others to improve upon their strengths, go after what their desires are, and kind of help inform that talent. So that's just a natural fit as I transcend from the workplace into my community. Transformational leadership has been another strength of mine because of focusing on growth mindset, again, motivating others. So that's how others, I say, will see me, definitely as a transformational leader. I'm always glass half full, optimistic. And I just, a lot of times, just share that out with those I connect and work with. But more recently, in the role I have now, Heather, the skill set that I'm really coming out as a leader that I didn't know I had until I was put into the role of diversity, inclusion, and belonging leader is empathetic leadership style. And a lot of it has to do with where we are with the pandemic as well. And that's being able to focus on identifying where others are with others and understanding truly from their point of view. And that's what I have to do in this role. I cannot be the same diversity, inclusion, belonging leader in the US as I can be in Europe. Those countries in Europe, they have different ways to navigate, they have different diversity needs. So a part of that is being an empathetic leader. As we deal with all of the racial injustice that's going on, sitting and having listening sessions, which you're very familiar with, I have to come in as an empathetic leader. So this is so important, and I'm building up my muscle in this area.
Where does your drive to lead come from? Like, what was it? Is it something that goes way back that just is always just made you want to be in this type of role?
It goes way back. What really drives me as a leader is passion and purpose. These are the twins that drive me. One of the things about the leadership for me, comes very naturally. One of my innate behaviors is the ability to want to protect. And that just comes out. And when you think about what does a protector do, they step in and they lead and become the leader of others. But yet I'm also a great supporter. I want to make sure I know when it's time to play certain roles, but it's definitely a part of who I am. And it's really my superpowers around personalization. So when I even talk about being a leader, it becomes natural for me. I also, again, going back to that empathetic leadership style I see really developing me now, I like to meet the people where they are. I love to get to understand and know who they are. And I hopefully like to build that relationship to where it evolves to a place where we collaborate and complement each other. So building those connections become important for me as well. So that's all a part of it. It just really is just a natural fit for me. And I am consistent in it, whether I'm in the workplace or in my community.
Yeah, that's awesome. I always think like I talk to people sometimes when I'm talking about where their drive to lead comes from. Sometimes it's like, well, a long time ago, my mom used to tell me this thing, or this thing happened with my parents or my family, and you get that background. So it's always interesting to hear, where people are coming from. Okay, so now we're at the point of the podcast where I ask you to think about a specific story, so a specific instance when maybe you didn't feel like you were leading with heart, you didn't feel like you were showing up as the caring leader. Yeah, I just let me know, what tell everybody, share it with us. What is that one thing that you could, that one time, and then what did you do to come out of it? What was it that helped you kind of get past that point?
Well, I'll tell you, Heather, I've had a few epic failures where I wasn't the best leader. However, those failure moments did turn out to be great lessons for me as a leader, because there's always something that's going to be lurking around the corner that's going to be really to kind of attack you. But to focus in on one moment that I like to share is when I didn't utilize my resources wisely. So, the title of this story is "Use Your Resources Wisely." There was a project that had a very short timeline, and it had multiple work streams that I had to ensure were covered. And I just did not do my best in ensuring that I was properly staffed with enough people with the right skills to complete the task in the timelines that were assigned. So I was just going through just ensuring, as the lead of that project, ensuring that I had at least coverage. And what I failed to realize as the time of that project drew to a close, there were huge gaps in the resources ability to be skilled to do the job or the availability to get the job done. And it truly impact the quality of the end result of that project. So one of the things that was very disheartening as I went through that is that I did have available skill resources that I just didn't leverage. So that to me was where I learned, starting out up front, I need to make sure I go and get the resources that I need and make sure I had the right coverage for that. Now, I will say, one of the things I had to learn to pick myself up and move forward is that I am human. I'm not perfect. I cannot take my mistakes and allow them to avoid me from continuing to navigate life. I have to understand I have to take risks in order to grow and gain the skills that I need to move forward. And that's why I reflect back on this. And I really like how you position that question to me, because being the best leader, you never get to 100%. There's no perfect score in being a perfect leader. You always have room for improvement. So I take those moments where I'm not the best leader, and there's probably another one, again, lurking around the corner, where I'm going to take it, a lesson learned, and improve upon it, because it's a continuous learning cycle.
Yeah, isn't that right? I always tell people this is not a road to perfection. It's just a continuous improvement. We're just trying to get better every day. We have to give others grace, and we have to be willing to give ourselves grace in the moment of our imperfections, because we are all imperfect. I always tell people, like, I write about this, I talk about this, I like do all these things about it, and I can guarantee you will be able to find me messing up, probably a couple times a day.
Absolutely. And I love what you say about grace, because that's one of the terms I use quite often when someone, feels as though they've had a shortcoming. It's like, you know what, I'm all about extending grace. So let's see what we can do. Pick yourself up. Let's see what we can do and help each other out to move forward. So again, when we talk about my leadership style, that empathetic leader probably is going to end up being, by the end of 2022, probably one of my stronger leadership skills over a transformational leader, because I believe grace is so important. Going back, we're all humans. So we do make mistakes. So you don't want to beat anyone up or beat yourself up because you had a shortcoming. You just want to see how you can improve upon it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. So now it's the time in the podcast where you get to actually ask me questions. So you get to turn it on me. You become the host all of a sudden. What questions might you have of me, knowing my background?
Oh, knowing your background. Wow. This is the one thing that comes to mind for me, Heather, is we look at 2022. It seems as though as leaders, we're still challenged with, especially in the business place, trying to navigate through, the racial inequities, the social unrest. How do you see leaders in 2022 really trying to manage through dealing what's happening in the society? Because employees are a part of the society, and a lot of employees are still working at home. So how do you help your employees navigate through that when you, and a lot of leaders are not able to see them physically in person, but they're in a remote space?
Yeah. I mean, I think that this is a question I get asked a lot. I think that the thing that we needed to do before, we just need to do more of it. So we already needed to spend one-on-one time with our people, connect with our people. We still need to do that right here on Zoom, on Teams, on WebEx, whatever platform it is. We need to not just be there talking to them about projects and processes that need to be completed. We need to be asking them how they're doing. How was their weekend? How is their family? Oh, I know your child had COVID. Oh, I know right. So you have to be comfortable about going into the deep. And meeting people where they are, in their shoes, right, with what they're facing, because it's the leaders who show up in the moment, even during the crises, even when people are crying, like whatever it is, with, like, as you mentioned earlier, empathy, compassion, really good listening, a preparation to act if we can. Those are the leaders who are they're going to keep their people longer. The people don't want to leave leaders like that because they're far and few between. So I'd say that's the biggest thing, is that the thing that we already needed to do, which is like having our one-on-one meetings, in person or not, so virtual or not, and keeping them on the counter and being consistent in that cadence weekly, if we can, with our direct reports, trying to have an overarching team meeting. So continuing to make sure you build the connections between you and them, and between them and each other, is going to be critical. And it's going to continue to be critical. It always was critical, but it's even more critical now. So you just be super intentional about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And what you said is important as well, is that having that connection, having that check-in point. And I know that was some of the recommendations were made for leaders to actually start their Zoom or team meetings, just asking their employees how they were doing. So I just kind of have that checkpoint, and making sure it's not always about business, but finding out about how that individual is doing. So that's great. Do we have time for me to ask you another question?
Oh, yes, of course.
One of the things, especially in my space, if I can kind of really personalize this question around diversity, inclusion, we can also put in equity as well, and belonging. From your perspective, the value we believe is the business case has been proven around the value that diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging bring to companies that see the need and facilitate it. But what do you, from your positioning, how do you really see distinguishing between walking the talk or just making it an action to say, yes, we're done it, but really not putting the effort forward? Do you see from your perspective how to navigate through that, being able to say, aligning the walk with the talk, and what should that look like versus, yeah, we care about it, it's an action. So hopefully I framed that up in a way that
yep, I get that. Well, it's funny that you say that, because I have the book I was telling you about that I'm going to be having come out next year on listening really focuses on this kind of change model around listening. And I think listening is the foundation of everything, including the DEIB work. So as we listen, there's a cycle or a process of listening, and we acknowledge what's not being said. We seek to understand, we decode. So we take some time to think about it, and then we act. But what most people or most organizations fail to do is they don't do what I call closing the loop. So they don't connect the dots or close the loop on the feedback of what they heard. So you've got to get your people bought in to the change that you and they are seeking. They need to know it's the change they're seeking first and you seeking second. So making sure that they do that close the loop process in a consistent way, in a cadence that's established, and they do it every single time is going to be critical. The other thing is, what other values you have hanging on your wall, on your letterhead, and whatever else you spout, make sure that your leaders at all levels are in alignment with those values, because your people at all levels, from below and above that, are actually watching so closely with a magnifying glass. Now, this is not about perfection, as I said, but they have to see the effort that the leadership team, directors, let's say, and above, is taking to live out those values in the DEIB space. How are they living them out? And if they're seeing gaps where, for example, there are lunch meetings happening and only certain types of people are enjoying, or there's golf happening, whatever it is, people are invited that only look like a certain group, that only have that one group makeup, then that is not alignment. So it's, I would say, alignment from the top, and having a very good overarching listening strategy that is exercised year after year, cycle after cycle, multi-medium, multi-participation, and then connecting the dots at the end.
Absolutely. Great insight. Thank you so much for the response.
You're welcome. Okay, so then now we're at the point where I want you to give these pearls of wisdom for those who are listening and are kind of like, maybe they're an interesting part in their place in their journey, and in their leadership journey, or even the DEIB space might not be, it could be anything. What might be a couple pearls of wisdom that you would leave them with today?
Wow. Pearls of wisdom in this space is, for me, definitely when I talk about the DEIB space, what has been most important is having the support from both perspectives, from the top, from the CEO, as well as from the employee base. Those two have been the bookends to help me to be successful in my role as a leader. And that has been consistent for me to be successful as a leader throughout my journey. The CEO supports me in diversity, inclusion, and belonging efforts. He has stated inclusivity and recognizing how important diversity is in our workspace is important to him. I have the same support from the employee base when I look at our employee resource groups leaders who represent them and come in and how they help to advance what we're trying to do in this workspace. That is the same approach I take as I navigate through leadership, is outside of my workplace, is ensuring that I have that same level of support, is having the support from the leader, because there's someone that is also leading the effort in which I am supporting, as well as from the members are, the constituents are, that they believe in the vision that has been cast and set, and listening. And I love how you said, Heather, it's always important to start with listening. And I will say that's another important jewel, is to always be listening. Always be willing to be agile and flexible to support as well, is another jewel. And what also I believe is important, be willing to invest in yourself. Continuing the education is so important. Keeping up on the current trends, knowing exactly what's important to help you to develop and be able to help you grow, and make sure that you're staying at the top of your game and your skills. So upskill, reskill is so important as well. So those become the jewels I believe that I believe and I know that has helped me to succeed. And another one is be willing to listen to the feedback. It may not always be good, and you got to have some thick skin sometimes. And I learned that as I was working on my doctorate and my doctoral program. There was one time my dissertation work came back with 142 edit requirements on it. I spent a whole weekend trying to make those changes. But one thing through that program, it learned me the importance of taking constructive feedback. And I tell people all the time, you can give me feedback. I have thick skin. Sometimes it does hurt, but sometimes it is very important to make you a better person. So in that to me is allow yourself some safe space. Now, sometimes you do get some feedback, Heather, that you go like, I don't accept that. That's not me. So people will be a little bit too open sometimes and overshare how they really feel.
You're
so
like,
you kind of have to take a moment to figure out, do I accept that or not? So you do have to qualify some feedbacks, if you will, or put a filter in place. So, but I will say in sharing out, I love the listening aspect, being making sure you have the right support system to help to move you forward, ensuring that you're investing and re-educating in yourself, and then be willing to take on that critical feedback.
I love that. That's so good. That is a two-way stone, right? On the feedback side, it's listening, and then but it's listening. Yeah, not always in this space where it's so fun to listen because you're like, oh, this is hurting, this is hurting, this is hurting. So I totally get that. Well, this has been great, as I knew it would be. Oh gosh, you and I could talk for a long time, and I plan on it. Whenever I get to Dallas, I'm gonna come see you. So
absolutely, and whenever I get to Colorado, I'll be doing the same thing as getting to see you. Now, long as the snow has passed.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not coming to snow, Heather. I like you, but not that much. Oh my gosh. Okay, so for those who are listening, if you found this episode really valuable, please do share it far and wide. It's the sharing of it that obviously gets into the ears of the leaders who need to hear it. And also don't forget to go write a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. And it's because the more reviews we have, the more we kind of rise up in the podcast space. And we are already like in the top 100 for all leadership podcasts, particularly globally. So that's kind of cool. People in Belgium are going to be listening to this. It's kind of a cool idea to be thinking about that. So please do go do that. And again, Dr. Toliver, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for saying yes.
And thank you so much, Heather, for the opportunity to do the sharing. This has been a great space to do so.
Yay. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining the Leadership at Heart podcast. Be well.